winning it this year.
I won it last year, the Father's Day raffle. The half of it Tim got and half of the Marco got because there was stuff that Tim wasn't interested.
Hi, Deirdre. Okay. I'm trying to get it close so we can maybe read it. I don't know. Mildred will be in charge of reading. You got your glasses on?
I don't have glasses on.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Well, I can put my glasses on again.
I might need you.
I don't like to wear my glasses unless I have to anymore.
Okay. So
I
now,
still can't read.
okay, so this is started too, so we're good.
I can't read.
Okay, I'll take care of it. I got it.
How is it supposed to
Hi,
be?
everybody. We are starting our book club. You're on there too, Mom. It's just the messages are on your face, but people can see it. So we're going to talk about the first section, Michelle Obama. I'm doing this with my mom. This is my mom, Mildred. This is my mom, Gabrielle. Okay, so I just wanted like other women to be in our club, and of course, especially for the next book, like if you're someone that's going to join us and you have other people in your household, it doesn't have to be women. This book, especially when we get to it, it's great for men. So you could read this book with your man, with your children, with your older, men in your house or whatever. So we're going to begin just like with the first little section, and the first little section is becoming me, I think. Yeah. And then it has like a little preface, and it kind of lets you into her life a little bit about how, she kind of came to this place where all of a sudden everything was over. Like they were living in their new home. She doesn't have anybody making her sandwiches anymore. She went and made her own sandwich, and then she's sitting there and she's like, what now?
Right.
And I feel like we as women, we're always getting to a place like that in our life where we're like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Or what is the next thing that I'm going to create? And that's why I kind of picked this book, because I feel like, yes, it's Michelle Obama. Yes, she's the first lady. And, like people might be like, oh, well, how could I read about her or be like her? But reality is, when you read the book, all us women are her in some way or another. And that's what I like about her, because I feel like she's so easy to relate to.
Yes.
What did you think?
I think everybody can relate to her.
All the struggles that we basically all have.
Yeah.
Different little nuances.
And then I like how she says, here I am in this new place and I have a lot to say, and then the book kind of begins. And I feel like as we grow, like we're always in a new place, and then we're like, you know what, I kind of have something to say, I'd like to share something with somebody. And here we are becoming me. Here's the first little section, and it kind of is like her childhood. So I love her mom. What did you think about her mom?
She's no nonsense.
Yes.
I love her.
Yes, I can relate to her mom, because her mom was pretty much like my mom. You knew exactly what she meant when she said what she said, and no nonsense type of person.
And I feel like my moms are like that. So I loved her mom, because her mom was like constantly trying and to put them on a path of something better and more, but also constantly letting them figure out how to get there and how to be in that place.
Yes.
So I love that about her, because a lot of us, like me especially, maybe just because I have a special need kid, but you kind of always try to help your kid too much,
I like the part when she was talking to her son, and he was telling her that this girl invited him over to the house. Instead of her telling him what he should do, she put it in his hands. And just told him, I know you'll make the right decision.
Yes.
And a lot of times as moms, we want to do everything for our children. We want to make their decisions and choices for them. But I really like that she raised them to be independent thinkers and to think for themselves.
And when she made the statement, she said the right decision.
Yes.
She's not like, you're going to go out there and make a choice. She's saying, you're going to make the right decision, because like in our house, it would be like, you're a Schweikart, you're a Newton, you're a Yotzo. You know what I mean? You're a Woods. Like I try to tell my grandkids that all the time. I'm like, you can do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're a Woods, and you represent us too. So just try to do. Get it together, Cam. Get it together, Cam.
She gave them a lot of freedoms. However, she raised them from little on to think the right way. The kids knew what was expected from them.
Yes.
Right.
And that helped them then when they grew up to be the way they are.
Yes, that's why she could trust them with making the right choices, because she instilled that in them while they were little.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I just wanted to say, like, the thing that I like about her, which isn't something that I had growing up, I liked about her, like, when she starts off, her world is small. And I always think, like, this is probably how DeMarco's world was. Because everything was, like, in a 5-block radius. Remember how she said that?
Yes.
Like, her whole life was in this box. And that was her, and I always was like, well, I bet you this is what it was like to be DeMarco, you know?
That's what it was like to be me.
Yeah.
We lived with our grandmother in one room of this 2-story house, and my uncle lived 3 doors down, and my aunt lived in 2 rooms of the house, and my grandparents lived upstairs, and we had the grocery store around the corner, and cousins and everything in in a 5-block radius. So we really didn't have any outside friends, because it was enough of us that we didn't need anyone else, so I can definitely relate to this.
Yeah, and I felt like when I do have like conversations with DeMarco, like his whole beginning of his life was all about his cousins. Like he didn't really need a whole lot of anything else. He got more friends, I guess, in high school or in school environment, and he's a great socializer. But I feel like when I was reading this, I was like, this is so DeMarco's life.
Yes, because we were a very close family, and all we needed was each other. There was plenty of us, cousins that we all grew up together.
So just like what Mildred's saying, like in her thing, she said everything was in a 5-mile radius, and she came to think of upstairs and downstairs as 2 different universes, ruled over by competing sensibilities. And I thought, oh, that's a cool statement, because even though it was different, they knew how they had to act in both different places, and they knew like there was order up and down, just different types of order.
Right.
Like more old school down, and then a little bit more new school up. Because her mom and dad, when they were young, they seemed really, just like social people. And even if they weren't social, like in the big sense, they were social in their home with their kids.
Right.
Yeah, like at the dinner table, all these conversations that they had. And I feel like that was our house. We always had conversations when we ate. Like that's our main thing. And I think that was the thing that I hated the most about being married to DeMarco the first time around, is that he never wanted to eat at the table. I'm like, what's wrong with you?
We ate at the table until they got to be teenagers, and then they ate in their room.
Yeah. He's still trying to go in his own room. I don't know what's wrong with him. Okay, and then she talks about like how she has Southside, who used to be West Side, but then he moved to the South Side, and that was her relative that introduced her to music.
Yes.
And was it the grandpa? Is Southside the grandpa?
Yeah, he was the grandpa on the daddy side. He was her dad's dad.
Yeah. So I feel like that's
and they
important
called
too.
him Southside because he lived.
But before that, he was West Side. I thought that was fun.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
where you live is what you're, what you become.
Yeah, right.
All right, and then it talked about. It kind of went on to like when she learned to play that piano, and I feel like that's an important part, because sometimes you're like around so much love and so much normal, what is your normal every day, that you never realize that there is something different. And I think that was noticed when she went to that recital. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah. Does anybody want to talk about that?
Because the piano that she was playing, what she was learning to play on, didn't have
missing keys.
it had missing keys, and it didn't have it wasn't a nice, pretty piano. And then when she went to her recital, she looked at the piano and she couldn't figure out what the keys were, because it was a
Her
perfect.
cues were the imperfections.
Yes.
And then she was in this perfect world, and she's like, I could still do this, but I don't know where to begin.
Right. That's right.
So I thought that's cool, because that's part of like growing up, when you all of a sudden are outside of your home and you're like, oh, like this is the same, but it's different. Because now I'm like in the world, you know. So I really loved that story. I thought it was great. And that story also is like the beginning of like how she's different than Barack, because she's like punctual, because her dad's situation, they always had to be punctual to get that parking spot so that he wouldn't have to walk real far. And then he's like not.
No, he was always late to everything.
And I felt like in my life, like when I first met DeMarco, like I used to be, I'm not no more. I've changed. I used to be like that that punctual person, and now I'm just like, whenever you're ready, we'll go. It doesn't even matter. What happened there, Mildred? What happened? He never's on time.
That has nothing to do with me, because I was always on time. He's had 20-something years on his own to form his own habits. And I don't know why that is, but children kind of, dissipate from how you raise them.
Yeah, but then
They become their own
Yeah.
person.
Right.
exactly.
I don't know if it's because, well, I did the same thing when I got grown. The things that my mom had me doing, or the things that she thought were so important, and I didn't think they were important. I did away with those things.
Yeah, but I will say, like, he's never late for work or anything like that. He's just like, when he's off work, it just is what it is, and we'll just do it when we do it.
Well, he's kind of laid back.
He's real like that.
I don't give a care.
And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about in this first little chapter, it's like about her dad too. I wanted to talk about like how this is really like a lot of people, how liberated you feel when you're behind the wheel of your own car.
Yes,
I
especially
think
back
everyone
then.
can relate to that.
Especially back in those
Yes.
times, because a lot of black people didn't have nice vehicles. And the way he described that car, it was a really nice car. And, so he had the independence of getting to where he needed to go and take his family on nice vacations and trips because he had that vehicle. He didn't have to catch the bus, depend on anybody else to get back and forth to work.
I like when she described her aunt when she came in at that piano recital and helped her out.
Mm-hmm.
But in her moment of, what is that, comeuppance? She arrived at my shoulder almost like an angel. Maybe she understood my shock. Maybe she knew that the disparities of the world had just quietly shown themselves to me for the first time. It's possible she needed simply to hurry things up too.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know.
Right.
But I think like so many times, like in our lives, people just show up and they're our little angels and help us out. Like not because we totally need help, but we just need that push to go the right way.
Well, she sat there for quite a while looking at that piano.
Yeah,
like
she
it-
was like, what do we do with this thing?
like she had never seen a piano keys
Where's my middle
before.
C? She said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because her middle C had a little mark on it. She could find it easy at
Yes.
home.
Yes.
And then I like when she started school. Remember that the white, how she couldn't read that cue card?
Mm-hmm.
And she did not like that. Like, she didn't like that she felt like she failed at something,
Mm-hmm.
and she was demanding a retest. Anybody want to talk about that? I just feel like that's Kennedy.
And you think that's Kennedy?
A little bit.
I really like that about her because a lot of children wouldn't have put forth that effort
Yeah.
to ask, what pretty much demand
Yes.
that she gets to take the test again. That's just kind of showed, what she was going to be.
Striving for perfection.
Expected from herself because
Yes.
when she grew up, certain things were expected from her, and
Mhm.
she instilled that in her.
Yep.
I mean, her mom was taking her to the library. She knew how to read. She knew how to write her name. She knew she was like really a step ahead of everyone. And then to not say white all of a sudden, I think it was like, hold up, I've been training for this all my life.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I have to perform.
Failure was not an option.
Yes.
In any form. Everything that she did, and plus she always was competing with her brother.
Yeah, and I like how in the book it also says nobody was talking about self-esteem or growth or mindset back then, because really that was kind of like belittling kids a little bit,
Mhm.
but they still do it in schools. Like it's always like some type of competition where they call you out, But so I wish they really would do that stuff, but you gotta have that kind of thing too. And then I think it's interesting, like how for a long time she didn't really want to socialize in the world. She was content with her Barbies and with her universe and with her controlled environment. I think she was a little bit of a control freak.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think it even said in there, like if her brother came in the room and touched one thing,
Yes.
it was on.
She was very in control of her environment. Remember when the I don't know if it was grandpa that came over and put the petition up to divide the room that her and her
Yes.
brother was sharing,
Mhm.
and that was her space.
Yes.
And
She was proud of
yeah,
that.
and she was very,
I think they were taught at a very early age, like, take care of your things, take care of your space. This
Yeah.
is you know, like,
Treat it with
Yeah.
respect and be proud of what you
Yeah.
have, you know.
and then I have some things highlighted, so I'll talk about it just to keep the conversation going. Because I just think like the first part is so cool because she's really like allowing us into her personal journey of growth as a beginning from the beginning to an adulthood. Because I think it stops when she graduates from Princeton and gets her job at that lawyer's office, right? Isn't that where the
Right.
first part stops? I think so.
I think so.
And then in here she says, as a kid she funneled everything through her mom. Like her mom was her personal advisor,
Yes.
or counselor.
Yes.
It's
That's a
everything.
rock.
Yeah, and her mom even made it so easy for her. Like when they were in grade school and she was a teenager, like they would
Mhm.
come home on their breaks to her house. All her friends would sit around.
Mhm.
They would talk about the things that were going on, and her mom just sitting there like not commenting but taking it in just to
Mhm.
make sure they were good. And because she did stuff like that, her mom saved her from that second grade. Was it the second or first grade? It was a first grade experience with that horrible teacher.
Yes.
And she got her tested out and up because she wasn't going to learn that year if she stayed in that class.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess when I just stay in tune with the kids.
That's another thing I liked about her mom is when she did go to her mom and complain about the teacher, that her mom listened to her and believed her and did something about it. And a lot of times parents don't listen to their children when they share stuff.
She
Concerns.
more or less said, yeah, oh dear, she did not fuel into that
No.
anger. A lot of adults fuel in it and then the kids go
Right.
overboard.
Yep.
Yeah, she always
With
was
that
like
negativity.
letting you know that she was listening, but
Mhm.
still letting you draw your own conclusions and maybe just making a comment here or there while you were creating that idea in your own head. So I loved it.
Never
Yeah.
fueling the negative.
No.
So this Craig, her brother Craig, like to me, he's just like Marco. He can get along with everybody. He can do whatever. I think my older brother was like that, Torsten, don't you think? Like,
Yeah, he
so
was
the way,
social.
like everybody's got somebody like that in their family. And again, like that's just another way of how she tells the story that makes you feel like this could have been my brother.
She looked up to him.
Yeah,
Yeah. They were like best friends.
they were. And when she had her own little world, he was the only one allowed in it. And he
Mhm.
would even like play with her sometimes. Like, okay, let's do this Barbie game. Let me get my G.I. Joes up. And I like it that she kept it real too, because she even said like it was a drama.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was things going on in that Barbie. Like even though she was living in her own world, she was looking out the window enough into the other world that she knew how to create drama in her child play.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was like a soap opera, she said. Okay. And then I like that her dad, always had money for all their educational things because he did not want to be house poor.
Right.
But he didn't want to not be house poor because he didn't have a good job. He was a boiler tech. He had a great job. He was highly respected at his job. He had a craft and everything. It was just that he didn't want to be put in a situation where, they paid for all of them to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the private schools and whatever it is they needed, they did. Or the trips to Paris.
That was their sacrifice.
Mhm.
The sacrifice of living upstairs over
Mhm.
the aunt in a 2-3 room
Mhm.
apartment versus buying a house. They saved that money to send them to college so they could further their education, and they lived in a 3-room apartment.
And I think it's cool that the people that lived in the White House also, Barack and Michelle, lived in that apartment where her parents lived.
Yes.
It says that later in the book.
Yes. Yes, they did.
I'm like, it's not your space that you're in, it's your mind. So I just think that's cool. Let's see. And then remember when they visited that family in the
They
suburb?
moved out in the
Yeah,
suburb.
and that car got messed up,
Mhm.
and how cool her dad was about it and just fixed it the very next day, but then
Yes.
they never went back.
Yes.
And I think it was just another thing that made him feel like, I don't want this, we won't never be house poor because I just don't want to deal with this either.
Mhm.
at least in my neighborhood, that's my neighborhood, you know.
Right.
And people respect me there. I go to visit you, and look what happened to my car.
Right.
And it was cool to say too, like that family was very fair skinned.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think her parents made a comment like, maybe we outed them when we came to visit them, and now people actually know that you're black. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yes.
But
Yeah, because when neighbors peeking,
Yeah.
I'm peeking out the window and I'm like, what they doing with them black people over there?
So I just wanted to touch on that too, because when that story happened, it made me think of something that we encountered when we first came to America. Remember when somebody put something on your car? Yeah. Yeah. But that just happens. Like people just look at you and judge you and do stuff. You know?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I was told. You're not in Germany here. You cannot associate with blacks. In Germany you can, but not here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they wrote in paint on my mom's car where we lived. Like I was like, wow, okay, what's going on here? This is crazy.
Yeah.
So then I was going to talk about Craig, like how he had that fear for fire.
Mm-hmm.
But was it really that he never wanted something to happen to his dad, and he was always thinking of a plan to make sure that they would? I felt like when I was reading that it was really like he started to realize his dad couldn't move like everybody else,
Right.
and he wanted to make sure that he was included in things that might harm him.
Mm-hmm.
Remember there was that fire in that neighborhood where the house burnt down and the kids
Yeah.
died?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that.
We had these practices and once a month in the evening.
Yes,
and
he was
Right.
like a drill
Encourage his
sergeant.
dad
To make sure that dad could get
Yeah.
out of the house because of his mobility issues.
Yeah.
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 And I think it's cool like how the family like allowed it. You know, they were like, okay, this is something that our kids want to do, and yeah, we're going to participate in that. Instead of like saying, no, you don't have to worry about this. They were like, okay, well
Mm-hmm.
let's do this. Let's do our fire drill.
took over the responsibility
Yeah.
of
Yes.
being in charge of the
Yeah.
family, that the family has a safe escape.
Yes.
And I really felt like that's what it was. She never really said that in the book. She said this was just one of his anxieties, and then she went into all the things they had to do because of it. But I was like, I think he just is starting to be a little more scared and aware. Let's see. And then here it just says about the hour-long lunch breaks, how she always went home. Yeah, again, like her mom was just real close to her and was involved, but involved without like a super dominant opinion, because she made her opinions known as they were growing up, you know, as their
And through her actions
Values
and
in
all that,
life,
they
yeah.
knew what she felt.
yeah. I told my mom everything that happened at school. Her lunchtime dates was followed by a second update, which I delivered in a rush as I walked through the door in the afternoon, slinging my book bag on the floor and hunting for a snack. And I realized I don't know exactly what my mom did during the hours as we were at school, mainly because in the self-centered manner of any child, I never asked.
Mm-hmm.
And then remember how her mom had that fantasy every
Spring.
when she cleaned the windows,
And
she
she
was
was
like,
gonna
I'm
leave Dad.
escaping.
I'm leaving Dad.
And then she said by the time she put
Having
all the
a life of my own.
yeah, and then as she put the windows back together, then she was like, I'm staying.
Yeah.
But I thought that's funny because
One more year.
yeah, because it's just like something that you go through, but it was kind of like maybe something that had to do with like winter depression too, because
They could.
winters are so hard up there, and then she was really stuck in her world, you know, of being a stay-at-home mom during those winter months. That in the spring when she cleaned, she was considering like, do I want to
I
do
can
this?
escape from
I'm
here.
an educated woman too. I can have my own life. I just thought that was funny, you know, and I just think like we're all dreaming about running away for a minute every here and there.
Just going away, have no responsibilities, be free,
Yes.
like a bird.
Yeah, because we all, yes, as parents
Oh
and
yeah, here it is. I'm gonna read it in a minute.
wives, you know, you get bogged down taking care of everybody else.
Go to
Much
51,
later, my
and then
mother
you can read
told
that
me-
second paragraph. That's where she much later.
Much later, my mother would tell me that every year when spring came and the air warmed up in Chicago, she entertained thoughts about leaving my father. I don't know if these thoughts were actually serious or not. I don't know if she considered the idea for an hour or for a day or for most of the season. But for her, it was the active fantasies, something that felt healthy and maybe even energizing to ponder, almost as a ritual.
Every year she did it. I wonder what what she did in the White House. I'm about to leave this family.
I understand that even a happy marriage can be a vexation, that it's a contract between renewed and renewed again,
Yes.
even quietly and privately, even alone.
That's right.
Yes.
I don't think my mother announced whatever her doubts and discontents were to my father directly, and I don't think she let him in on whatever alternative life she might have been dreaming about during those times.
I think she was telling her daughter to prepare her daughter for marriage too. Like, it's not going to be
That's
like a
perfect.
contract that's perfect.
Mhm.
It's something that you have to work on and make a conscious decision to stick out.
And you have to renew that commitment
Yeah.
often.
And I felt like that was part of that too. She was like letting her know, it's not going to be perfect, even when you find the perfect guy.
Mhm.
So I like that how she slips these little reality checks into her daughter without actually telling her what
Oh,
the
life
checks
is not a
about.
honeymoon.
Yeah, no, life's not. Learning the piano wasn't a honeymoon.
Mhm.
I think that says a lot about her personality too, because her aunt was like, you do this song, then you do that song, then you do this song, then you do that song. And Michelle was like, I'm an expert, so I'm gonna go to the back of the book and do this last song. And she was like, no, now we're done.
You follow rules. Do it my way or no way.
Yeah. And then, later on in the book, it says her mom did go back to work because she really was funding them through high school.
Mhm.
Because they all went to a special high school and did their little special things. And at one time, I think her school was going to Paris. She felt like that was too much for her family. She didn't even tell her family. Then when they found out about it, they were like upset, and they let her know, even though she felt like she was an adult. Because it says
You're
in the
not
book,
making the
yeah,
decisions.
that is what we decide,
Right.
And then she went on that trip because her parents didn't want her to miss any enriching opportunity in life. That's what I felt like. Did you feel like that?
They felt like that it was their responsibility to be able to give her those opportunities.
Yeah, especially her school was free.
Yes.
They didn't have to pay. Her brother's school they had to pay.
Right.
And she got into that special,
Chapter school or something. Wasn't it a chapter school?
like for smart kids,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And then I just think this is cool that she lets us into this part of her life. Am I good enough? Like, every time we start something new in our life, we're always asking ourselves, am I good enough? Is this enough? Like, am I enough for this journey? Am I enough? I mean, I did it when I started my master's degree. I was like, am I good enough for this? Like, can I do this? Like, I don't know. Like, you're questioning yourself, and then as you go along, you're like, yeah, I can do it. So it's fine to question yourself. Just don't give up on your dreams. You are good enough.
The struggle in the new school.
Yeah.
When the advisor tells her she shouldn't think of Princeton or whatever.
Oh, 60, if you want to read that. That's that part with that Paris trip. Page 60, I don't know. I don't know.
Yet one evening, my parents sat me down looking puzzled. My mom had learned about the Friends trip through Terry Johnson's mom.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell us, she said, because it's too much money. That's actually not
For you to decide.
for you to decide.
Mishi.
Mishi, my dad said gently, almost offended. And how are we supposed to decide if we don't even know about it? Says I looked at them both, unsure of what to say. My mother glanced at me with her eyes soft. My father had changed out of his work uniform into clean white shirt. They were in their early 40s then, married nearly 20 years. Neither one of them had ever vacationed in Europe, but they never took beach trips or went out to dinner. They didn't own a house. We were their investment, me and Craig.
Yeah, everything went into them. And I just commend them because, when they say everything went into them, she didn't mean like name brands, because her mom was making her own clothes until she was in high school, because they were saving in every possible way.
Yes.
Then after high school, when they started to demand for something different, then some things were afforded to them that were not hand sewn or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And then I think it leads us into her relationship with Sanita.
Yes.
And that was interesting too, don't you think? Because it was kind of like a platform to get her ready for some of the things to come.
I think so.
That's on 63.
I think so.
And then I just highlighted this: schedule and plans never seem to stick. And for Michelle, that was a hard thing when she was with Obama because she was like, listen,
Yes, because
I'm
she
not putting
scheduled.
these kids to sleep till you come home.
She scheduled and planned
Yes.
everything. So she couldn't deal with him because he was just like haphazardly late all the time, whatever. You know, no. She had scheduled her life completely. Her whole life was scheduled out. What she was going to do next. I do this, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And then he comes in the picture and just messes up her nice little plan.
Yeah, he did. He did. You did that. So I just thought, like, but knowing her, and because that's the daughter of Jesse Jackson, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Reverend Jesse Jackson, she was introduced to that life where nothing's ever really done, where they're always sitting around waiting for somebody to give them a ride, but something else pops up, and the next thing you know, they're in a break.
Waiting for the delayed
Remember?
train.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I just thought, like, even though she didn't know that was eventually going to be her life, she was already kind of,
She was kind of thrust into
Yeah.
it, really,
Uh-huh.
by being friends with.
and then I was thinking, isn't that God, though?
Yes.
Preparing you for something you can't even imagine is going to happen
Mhm.
to you. Like, that's when I read that, I was like,
Yeah,
oh my
she
God,
was-
that's
she
like a
was-
God moment,
She
you know?
was set up.
Yeah. So it just, and then I like how she, gave him all respect and said that he was the first African American candidate that ran a successful presidential campaign.
Mhm.
Campaign, okay. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And that was in, well, here it says somebody else too. A Congresswoman ran in 1972, Shirley Chisholm.
Mhm.
Chisholm, I may not be saying that right. I apologize. It's on page 64 if you got the book. So she was on the track to graduating at the top of her class. And then remember when she was on the bus, how she felt like all of a sudden she realized like the world was bigger than her 5 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Because she had to travel for 2 hours to go to school.
Yes. And what, catch how many buses?
5 or something
She
crazy.
had to
Yes.
transfer, I don't know how many times.
And
Yeah,
that was
she-
her parents' expense, that monthly bus ticket
Yes.
for her. That was their main expense for
Mhm.
her to go to that
You
school.
know,
It
she
says
and her
that.
friend figured out if they backtrack,
Yeah,
they can get
they
a
get
seat.
seats, sit down. So
Yes.
Otherwise, at their place, it's always full. They have to
Yeah,
stand
you
for
had to
an
stand
hour.
out. That's right.
All right. And then remember, and I'm going to talk about her counselor at school.
Yes.
When her so it was her senior year. Was it a junior or senior year? I don't know. One of those years where you decide where are you going to go to school.
I don't think it was.
junior.
I don't
know.
It might have been sophomore.
Yeah.
I think it was her
something.
first year in high school.
So I'm just going to read. I'm going to have one of you guys read it. It starts on
When it
65.
came time to look at college, Santita and I both were interested in schools on the East Coast. She went to check out Harvard, but was disheartened when an admission officer pointedly harassed her about her father's politics, when all she wanted was to be taken on her own terms. I spent a weekend visiting Craig at Princeton, where he seemed to have slipped into a productive rhythm of playing basketball, taking classes, and hanging out at a campus center designed for minority students. The campus was large and pretty, an Ivy League school covered with ivy, and Craig's friend seemed nice enough. I didn't overthink it from there. No one in my immediate family had much in the way of direct experience with college, so there was little anyway to debate or explore. As had always been the case, I figured that whatever Craig liked, I would like too.
Yes.
And that whatever he could accomplish, I could as well.
Mhm.
And with that, Princeton became my top choice for school.
That's how she picked the school she was
But
going
now
to.
read this
Early in my
Yes.
senior year at Whitney Young, I went for an obligatory first appointment with a school college counselor to whom I had been assigned. I can tell you much about the counselor because I deliberately and almost instantly blocked this experience out. I don't remember her age, her race, or how she happened to look at me that day when I turned up in her office doorway. full of pride at the fact that I was on track to graduate in the top 10% of my class at Whitney Young, that I'd been elected treasurer of the senior class, made the National Honor Society, and managed to vanquish pretty much every doubt I'd arrived with a nervous 9th grader. I don't remember when she inspected my transcript before or after I announced my interest in joining my brother at Princeton the following fall. It's possible, in fact, that during our short meeting the college counselor said things to me that might have been positive and helpful, but I recall none of it. Because rightly or wrongly, I got stuck on one single sentence the woman uttered. "I am not sure," she said, giving me a perfunctory, patronizing smile, "that you are Princeton material." Her judgment was as swift as it was dismissive, probably based on a quick glance, calculus involving my grades and test score. It was some version, I imagine, of what this woman did all day long in this practice efficiency, telling seniors where they did and didn't belong. I'm sure she figured she was only being realistic. I doubt that she gave her conversation another thought. But as I've said, failure is a feeling long before it's an actual result. And for me, it felt like that's exactly what she was planting. A suggestion of failure long before I'd even tried to succeed. She was telling me to lower my sight, which was the absolute reverse of every last thing my parents had ever told me.
Okay, so when I read that, I felt so bad because, so I'm just gonna take it personal. Remember when Kiki wanted to go to the Art Institute Chicago? And in my heart, I was like, I didn't want her to go. I wanted her to stay here and do 2 years here, then go. And you know, we never told her what to do. She did everything she wanted to do with her whole life. But I was only being realistic financially. Do you know what I'm saying? But then I always think, like, was I that lady? Do you know what I wasn't doubting her ability to be an artist or be creative or anything. I just wanted her to do those first 2 years that don't mean that much in college at a more realistic institution that didn't cost as much. But then after I read this, I was like, who am I to stop her, you know what I mean, from where she wanted to be?
But who knows, you might have kept her from failure and being kind of depressed if it didn't work out in Chicago. She would be far away from family, and was she that stable? Was she that strong?
I don't know. But I mean, she went to visit and she did some things there, but she never really went. I don't know if it was because of Chris and they got together. Do you know what I mean? Well, I don't know what it was. I don't think it was directly what I said.
You know, her housing fell through. That's the reason she didn't.
Okay. But then I always was thinking too, Kiki's always been in her 5-block radius.
Yeah, but it was time for her to
Yeah.
venture.
But when I read this, I was thinking, oh my God, am I that lady? Not that lady, but you know what I mean? You know how you read stuff and you reflect on the things that you said, you're like, oh, now I feel kind of crappy about that.
Well, I've always encouraged her to do more, to adventure out more, because I didn't want my fears, because I didn't take chances that I wished I had taken when I was her age because of fear. And I didn't want her to do that. I wanted her to, if there's something that she wanted to try, I wanted, because I told her, you have a bed to fall on.
Yeah.
You're going to always have a bed to fall on, but go, try. If it's something you want to do, try. Because failure, only thing that beats a failure, and my mom used to tell me this all the time, the only thing that beats a failure is a try. If you're afraid to do it, try it. You might succeed. If you don't, try again. So yeah.
I thought of that, but then I also thought, like, remember when Nye was going through her college and we would sit here and like pretty much help her do her homework. It was so stressful, but that girl did not study. I'm sorry, Nye, but you got problems.
She did not learn from little on to independently do her work and study on her papers.
So we had to like encourage her all the time, like sit with her, but I wanted to get her through it, so I was going to do it. It was no big deal, but let me tell you, it's like I went to school with her when she went to her school. I was like, oh my God. But like we do so many things for our kids. Some of them we know is right, some of them we question later in life, but at the end of the day, they make all their own choices. You build yourself, So when I read that, I was like, oh my God, am I that horrible counselor? Because I'm like a realist. Like I'm like that. I have like a realist mindset, even though I'm a dreamer too, which is why I don't think I ever ventured out into my dreams till I was older and more stable, because I wasn't willing to take those risks.
Right.
I'm not really to take those risks right now.
You're
I'm
not
about
a
to
risk.
quit my job. You know what I mean?
You're not a risk taker.
No, I'm really not.
You're a planner. Yeah.
Okay. And then I think like when she goes to Princeton, she's so funny because her boyfriend drives with her to Princeton. She already knows it's over because their relationship was in this environment. She wasn't taking that relationship into her new environment.
Well, she said she knew long distance was not going to work.
Yeah.
So there was no sense in holding on to something that was not going to.
And her dad knew it too. He was like lingering, waiting for her to take care of the business, but she didn't. She like waited till they weren't face to face, and then
she was. He felt sorry for the little boy.
Yeah, he did. He was like, "Why we got him way out here?"
Well, I think he mentioned something in the book in this chapter about when she went home, and she doesn't remember taking Barack home to meet her parents, but the brother tells the story. And when they leave, the dad says, I feel sorry for him. Because it ain't gonna last.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah,
he ain't gonna work with my daughter.
No, it's not gonna last. He said
too relaxed.
that's because he didn't fit in her plan.
Yeah. And she will admit that he didn't, and
Right.
that she made compromises for love.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's cool too, because at the end of the day, we all making some type of compromise for love. But what was I gonna say? I like how she keeps it real about her college experience, how it was like a mainly white male experience, and how she immediately was attracted to the urban center. I don't remember the name of it. You guys remember the name of it? And then how she got engaged there and kind of like started her own little developing, like that she loves working with children, that she likes being, really, I think her thing was she likes a project.
Yes.
And she likes to begin something and complete it, and what did she say? She liked like how refreshing it is to be around kids, like how it refreshes you. So I don't remember how she worded it. So I think it was called the TWC Center, the Third World Center.
Yeah, TWC.
Yeah, and they hosted parties there and co-op meals, and there she met Susan Adeli. Is that her name? Susan? No, A-L-E, Susanna. I don't know, but that's where she met that lady that number one introduced her to New York, because she took her to New York, and that ended up being a city that
Right.
she was attracted to, and she introduced her to. Well, they were kind of like they had a need. All these people that worked there had a need for after-school daycare or childcare. You know what I mean? And then she had that ability to work so well with children, and she had babysat for all those people, I think, but mainly Susan. And then they created that program. And I just remember when
the Third World Center was Christian Carl A. Field Center for Equality and Cultural Understanding. It was named after the first African American dean of Princeton.
And then that's the lady.
Quickly became a home for meals. It was parties, full of meals.
And I think she was that kind of person that was always looking for her niche. Just like how she didn't go out of her house till she was ready to leave her house. And she formed her little circle, at her Whitney. She only had like those certain people that she was associated with, and now she found another little niche for herself, and I'm sure it was really hard there too. Being the first for everything is hard. Not that she was the first, but she was a minority there, getting ahead. And then, and I love like how that environment created all this confidence in her.
Yes.
Where it really gave her voice. Like she started to, like, remember that chapter where it's like she was raising her hand, like she didn't feel like, she didn't care. She was willing to put her opinion. Even if I, did it stop? I can't tell. Are we still on? Is somebody out there can tell us if we're on? I
I
can't
don't
tell.
know.
It doesn't matter. Hold on. I don't know. I think we're still on. So I'll just leave it. If not, I have a
Where's
videotape and it'll be
Lexi?
here too. I know. I need her. Like she normally helps me out with these technical problems. But so then I love it that they have this place for her and this after school program. I could totally relate to it because when my mom went to SIUE, remember those people that were in childcare and doing things like that? They had programs for us all the time after school there too.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like all colleges kind of eventually have gone to that.
I like it. And 76, it says my financial aid package. So she had to get financial aid.
It's probably to get a work study job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did that too. I mean, I had financial aid, and I still had I had a work study too to have money in my pocket. And then every now, because I was a family, I had to get some student loans out too to subsidize because they wouldn't let you work more than 20 hours a week with your job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I like it that she says it because there's no shame in that. That's what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like people make you feel like so shameful when you're offered some type of assistance. Why? I'm getting ahead. She never needed any assistance after that ever again. Like what, you know, what is the shame in that? Like that's what you get ahead. And then I think this is where she met her other friend. What was her name? The one that died from cancer. Are you there in the book yet? They moved out and they got their own apartment together. Let's see where we're at.
What you talking about?
You know about that girl,
Becoming Us?
her roommate, who later on
Yes.
she found out that she was so embarrassed because her mother, a school teacher in New Orleans, didn't want her to be rooming with a black person.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
that too.
Yes, yes.
She disappeared. She never really
Kathy,
realized
one of my
why.
roommates, would surface in the news many years later describing with embarrassment something I hadn't known when we lived
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
Her mother, a school teacher from New Orleans, had been so appalled that her daughter had been assigned a black roommate that she badgered the university to separate us. Her mother
Mhm.
also gave an interview confirming the story and providing more context. Having been raised in a home where the N-word was a part of the family's lexicon, having had a grandfather who had been a sheriff and used to brag about chasing black people out of town, she had been horrified, as she put it, by my proximity to her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think we're encountering that still today. People are just
Yes.
so ignorant that I try not to let ignorant people affect me. I feel like you need to be uncomfortable because I'm not. So just be as uncomfortable as you want to be over there in your corner.
And she said, all I knew at the time is that midway through our freshman year, Kathy moved out of our triple and into a single room, and I'm happy to say that I had no idea why.
Yeah, that was
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Like even though they did this, like it was never, didn't affect her at all, which I think is great. And then here it says, you know, she was a box checker, effort result. That was her life. That's what she believed in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she was, where did she go to get her master's degree, her law degree? Where did she go for that?
Harvard?
Was it Harvard?
Yeah,
I think it
so,
was.
Harvard.
Yeah.
And that's where she met Barack. He was in
Mhm.
Harvard too.
No, she met him at her firm. She did not
Oh,
meet
yeah.
him in school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
But going to Harvard gave her that reputation, which got her the job at the firm. You know,
Mhm.
like they're looking for only these Ivy League
He was still
people.
going to law school.
Mhm. Yeah, so here it
He was
says,
a few years behind.
Mm-hmm.
so then she gets her job at this law firm, and then she meets Barack in chapter 8 on
Mhm.
page 95. And of course he's late. I repeat, he's late. Their very first meeting, and it's not even personal, it's about the job. He walks in there late, and walks in late without apology, just like, hello, how you doing?
I'm here.
I know you've been waiting for me. But I think it's cool, like, even there at the beginning it shows, like, she did her job with him, she did the things that she was supposed to do with him, and then she did her own little task, and then he would always stop by every evening sit in her chair and they would chit chat. Like that relationship was beginning then already.
Well, she didn't really care for him
No, she didn't.
at the beginning.
Because he was late.
Yes, and
Who is that one?
and then
kid
too,
everyone talks about?
everybody was talking about him like he was some big hot shot. And then he walks, mosey on in there all late, and she had interfering with her schedule.
Yeah, so he was a summer associate there, and I like this. I like how she gives him props though and everything. Very quickly, I realized that Barack would need very little in the way of advice. Like, and then she's the kind of person, just like how her mom taught her. You just do what you're supposed to do, and then you don't need to do more than that. And because I think her mom was that person, so it was easy for her to fall back too. Like, okay, we'll just chit chat. You know what I mean?
Well, that's because he was 3 years older than her, and he already, had been working for several years.
But he was still in law school, and she already had her
Yeah,
law
he
school
went back to
degree.
school.
Yeah. And he did, and then she was privy to like the things that he did during his break, which made him more mature, and that was that he was involved in all these community things.
Yeah.
Work for the
Community organizer,
Yeah.
and so on. He had some experience that she did not have.
Yeah. And then they went on that date where they went to one of those things, or he went to one of those things, or and that was like the beginning of the relationship where she also had like she didn't know like the future, but she realized, oh, this guy's like good talking to people, and he cares about the community, and he's trying to fix some things, and he wants things to be better. Like his vision's big, beyond his home. So I thought that was cool.
This, I like it on page 98 where she says, Barack was the first person I had met from Cito who had spent time in the barbershops, barbecue joints, and the Bible thumping black parishes of the north side, far south side before going to law school.
Yes.
He had worked in Chicago for 3 years as a community organizer, earning $12,000 a year from nonprofits that bound together a coalition of churches. So he was instrumental in bringing churches together.
Rebuilding communities and bringing back jobs.
Yep.
That was his task.
Yep.
Barack bore no resemblance to the typical eager beaver summer associate, as I myself had been 2 years earlier at Sidway. Networking furiously, anxiously wondering whether a golden ticket job was coming, he sounded more around with calm detachment, which seemed only to increase his appeal. Inside the firm, his reputation was continuing to grow. Already, he was being asked to sit in on high-level partner meetings.
She was probably like, how is he doing this?
Already, he was being pressed to give input on whatever issues there were under discussion. At some point early in the summer, he pumped out a 30-page memo about corporate governance that was evidently so thorough and cognate it became instantly legendary. Who was this guy? Everyone seemed intrigued. I brought you a copy, Barack said one day, sliding his memo across my desk with a smile. Thanks, I said, taking the file and looking forward to it. After he left, I tucked it into the drawer. Did you know I would never read it? I think he probably did. He'd give it to me, like half as a joke.
Yeah, because they socialized like that,
Yeah.
that was their thing. And I thought it was, so then Barack goes to her, this is 103. Who wants to read this? This is just like, I love this. I think we should go out, like in the middle of page 103. Somebody want to read that? That's funny.
It says, I think we should go out, Barack announced one afternoon as we sat finishing the meal. What, you and me? I grinned, shocked that he even considered it a possibility. I told you I don't date, and I'm your advisor. He gave her a laugh. Like that counts for anything. You're not my boss, he said, and you're pretty cute.
I just thought that's funny.
Yeah.
He had a smile that seemed to stretch the whole width of his face.
Yeah, I just think the romance is real cute and charming, and when you read it, like you'll fall in love with it. I hope if you haven't read the book that you do, because it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then at the end here on 107, that's like their first little date. One of you guys want to read it?
Should we get some ice cream?
Yeah.
This is when I knew the game was on. One of the few times I decided to stop thinking and just live. It was a warm summer evening in the city that I loved. The air felt soft on my skin. There was a Baskin Robbins on the block near Barack's apartment, and we got ourselves 2 cones, taking them outside to eat, finding ourselves a spot on the curb. We sat close together with our knees pulled up, pleasantly tired after a day spent outdoors, eating our ice cream quickly and wordlessly, trying to stay ahead of the melt. Maybe Barack read it on my face or sensed it in my posture. The fact that everything for me had now begun to loosen and unfold. He was looking at me curiously with a trace of a smile. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. And with that, I leaped in and something felt clear.
Everything felt
And that's the end of like that first section, and this is how we'll review the book. Like we'll just talk about the things that we reflected on or that we could relate to, and we hope you join us. And we're going to meet every other Friday. Our next Friday is June 14th. That'll be Becoming Us, and then we'll cover Becoming Better June 28th. Is that what it's called? Becoming More.
Becoming more.
Yeah, we'll do that June 28th, and then we will start with Trevor Noah. And we'll do this in 3 sections too. And we're not doing it in 3 sections because it takes 3 sections to review this. We're doing it so that if you're interested, you have 2 weeks to catch up and join us. And of course, you know, it's live, so we want everyone to join us and, you know, let us know what you think. And if nothing else, we're just encouraging people to read. There's nothing wrong with reading. So I was just going to say one other thing that I think was preparing her for her life in politics. Her dad, when he was in the union, and he would take her everywhere because she was still in her bubble, and she would go everywhere with him as he would go in with, and I felt like her dad was like Barack in those instances, because he would go in and take his time with every single person, listen to their complaint, you know what I mean, and be real down to earth and personal with them, and then take all his notes and then go from there. And that's something I feel like that Barack does that probably maybe somehow attracted her to him too. Who knows? Like, we don't know, we're just guessing. That he is that kind of person, real personable, like sitting down, taking his time with you, which is why he can never come home on time. So I thought, like, yeah, it was Jesse Jackson, that was an insight, but I think her dad was that first insight into that life.
I think so too.
Because she was, what was she, the closer on the campaign trail, which really was, she was doing what her dad had done when she was with him. And then she carried that on, you know, like what her dad did. And then in that first part, I think that's also when we realized that her dad is deteriorating.
Yes.
I don't know if he passed away in that first part. Did he pass? I think he passes away in the second part.
He passes away in the second part.
Yeah.
Okay.
He got to meet Barack and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the second part, he passes away.
So we'll just leave it there. We'll finish it. You guys just catch up if you're not reading it, and if you are reading it, we'll discuss the second half. And have a great day.